As we get ready to join together in this final time, I just appreciated that reminder. Like, I don't know where we're going to be heading back, but I just really hope the last few days for you have been a place to just pause and absorb and know that the Lord is filling you, give you just what you need as we get ready to go back to wherever it is we have come from. And so in that spirit, let me once more just offer a word of prayer, and then we'll dive in together. So let's pray. Lord God, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to come these days and be refreshed and renewed and challenged. Thanks, God, for the opportunity to connect with others. Thanks, God, for a chance just to have our souls filled and stretched and stirred. Lord, as we get ready to dive into this final session here this morning, I just pray that you would give us an extra sense of awareness of your presence. That, Lord, you will speak to us whatever it is we most need in these moments, and that will best prepare us as we get ready to head back. And so once more, Lord, I pray, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be pleasing and acceptable in your sight, shaking us to new life in you. O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, I'm hoping at this point there's a couple of things that you feel like, hey, I'm starting to get a sense of what can I take back with me in light of some of the things that I have shared. And so simply but significantly, maybe a working definition of discipleship. It's interesting, if you say disciple or discipleship to someone, we can have a whole bunch of different ideas. And so just finding some clarity around that. But I hope beyond that we've gained some clarity around some of the dynamics of that wicked problem of discipleship, the many layers that we encounter there, and hopefully starting to understand there are some layered responses that we can give and live into with that. I hope that in what we're sharing here, one of the things I love about it doesn't depend on the size of your church, it doesn't depend on a whole lot of things, it just depends on intentionality and seeking to live into that. And so I hope you've been able to identify what's kind of the feel right now of your discipleship culture and living into that. What are some of the primary barriers in your setting and being able to identify those? Because when we can name it, again, we can navigate it. And I hope then that we can start to ask some questions to understand, well, if we're really good at things like formal discipleship, how do we improve informal discipleship? If we're really good at informal discipleship, how do we improve our formal? It's great that we have shepherds. We need apostles. Oh, we have apostles. We need shepherds. I just hope some of those questions are rising up for you, hopefully in an easy way, but a significant way so that you can navigate where you are. And part of what we're going to do this morning is try to tie all of this together as practically as we can for what this can look like in your setting. And again, it can be as simple as just you right now. It could be you and two others, or this could be in relation to you in your entire ministry setting. So that's what we're going to look at together here a little bit this morning. My friend JR says, as we're going through things, treat it like seafood. What you like, keep and eat. What you don't like, throw out the bones, right? Like, just kind of do that. I invite you to do that as I'm sharing with you here this morning. So I just kind of set the stage that way for you. And what I want to do this morning to get us started, we've spent some time really observing kind of that discipleship problem that we face. We spent some time asking some interpretive questions around, all right, how do we navigate this? And now today, how can we take some specific actions to actually see discipleship change among us? So what I want to invite us to do is, a number of years ago now, I came across a TED Talk that I really liked, that I want to share with you. And I think it is a great modern day parable of discipleship, all right? So just know that that's why I'm showing you this video when you're watching it, all right? So keep that in mind, and let's go ahead and watch the video together.
So ladies and gentlemen, at TED, we talk a lot about leadership and how to make a movement. So let's watch a movement happen, start to finish, in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons from it. First, of course, you know, a leader needs the guts to stand out and be ridiculed. But what he's doing is so easy to follow. So here's his first follower with a crucial role. He's going to show everyone else how to follow. Now notice that the leader embraces him as an equal. So now it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Now there he is calling to his friends. Now if you notice that the first follower is actually an underestimated form of leadership in itself. It takes guts to stand out like that. The first follower is what transforms a lone nut into a leader. And here comes a second follower. Now it's not a lone nut, it's not two nuts. 3 is a crowd, and a crowd is news. So a movement must be public. It's important to show not just the leader, but the followers, because you find that new followers emulate the followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, and immediately after, 3 more people. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point. Now we've got a movement. So notice that as more people join in, it's less risky. So those that were sitting on the fence before now have no reason not to. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, but they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. So over the next minute, you'll see all of the those that prefer to stick with the crowd, because eventually they would be ridiculed for not joining in. And that's how you make a movement. But let's recap some lessons from this. So first, if you are the type, like the shirtless dancing guy, that is standing alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals. So it's clearly about the movement, not you. Okay, but we might have missed the real lesson here. The biggest lesson, if you noticed, did you catch it? Is that leadership is over-glorified. That yes, it was the shirtless guy was first, and he'll get all the credit. But it was really the first follower that transformed the lone nut into a leader. So as we're told that we should all be leaders, that would be really ineffective. If you really care about starting a movement, have the courage to follow and show others how to follow. And when you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first one to stand up and join in. And what a perfect place to do that, Ted. Thanks.
That is one of my favorite examples of, I think, discipleship, right? Like, so I want to invite all of you to be, for us, first followers, right? We follow Christ as Lord and Savior, and so we are first followers. But here's the other thing. I don't know how you feel in your setting right now. Maybe you feel like the lone, shirtless, dancing guy. Like maybe you feel like I am alone out there. My invitation to you today, in part, is to find those other people with shining eyes and invite them to join with you. And here's also what I would say. It may take some time, but movements can happen with intentionality and a willingness to follow and a willingness to join in. So I always love watching that. And, you know, it's always interesting, isn't it? At the beginning, it's kind of weird. Don't want to go out there. But as the culture changes, there's also almost a magnetism, and suddenly we're all doing this. That's what we're trying to figure out here. And so, again, whether you're here today as a lone nut or you feel like we got lots of momentum, wherever you might be, I just invite us to think about what might God be doing among us and how can we keep fostering that discipleship movement that we have going on. And that's kind of what we've been trying to figure out here these last number of days. So again, for us, when we're talking about, I like this image of dancing, because what we're trying to do is figure out the dance in part between those formative realities of discipleship and those generative realities of discipleship. And we're going to explore a little bit more this morning how that dance can occur. Hopefully at this point, you're starting to feel like, hey, I'm getting this, but just to lift it up, even for us, like what does multi-layered discipleship look like and mean? You know, we want to focus on our shepherds and teachers, yes, but we also need those apostles and prophets. And so which ones do you have in your setting? Which ones don't you have? Are we really good at being structured and not so flexible? Or, hey, we're great at being flexible. We need some help on structure. Are we good at being intentional? I love that there are plans already a year from now to gather here with a speaker lined up. That's intentionality. We need that. That is great. But yet when you get together next year, and just like this year, there's an informality too, right? All the conversations, all the laughter that's happening everywhere else, which in our church we're doing pretty well at, which do we need some help with? Are we doing good in our formation with people, helping them go deeper? Are we doing well in our generation, reaching and connecting with new people for life? Which one of those do we need help with? And on the last one, orthodoxy. We're really good at talking about doctrine, helping people understand and believe correctly. We're not so good at helping people live it out. We're awesome at living and serving and using our hands. We've not done a good job of going deeper, focusing on that right belief. So where are you in those tensions? And I just invite us to navigate them in this dance of discipleship. One more time. Matthew 4:19, Jesus said, "Come follow me, and I will send you out to fish for people." So who are our disciples? Someone who is following Jesus, accepted Christ as Lord and Savior, being transformed in Jesus, daily being changed, and is committed to the mission of Jesus, more disciples. So here's what I'm going to do with you. I'm going to give you a couple of very specific examples. I'm almost just going to pick up where we were last night. We started talking about those different tensions, and I'm going to name those again here in a little bit. But I want to give you a couple really practical examples for us, literally from the ground up, of how some folks in our setting have taken this disciples journey and what it's looked like. And again, do not hear this as a prescription for you to follow exactly. Hear this as the right nuggets for you to take with you in your journey. So first of all, and I've shared a little bit of Michelle's story with you, a couple of you. This is Michelle, and that's her grandson. And Michelle joined in the life of the church, and so the first step that she took is she connected with us. She joined in formal membership. She found us as a church and said, I want to journey with you. That was that first step of discipleship. She became familiar with our vision, who we are, how we try to do things. As we got to know Michelle, we spent some time observing with her. In our disciples journey, step 2, we spent a lot of time focusing on her and her unique gifts and abilities. So for Michelle, some of her strengths are that she is a connector. She has the gift of consistency. She's a developer. She has a way of bringing harmony with those that she works with. And she's a relator. She again, relates and connects well with other individuals. We also found this out about Michelle as we talked about her gifts and observed them. Some of her top spiritual gifts were the gifts of faith, of giving, and of hospitality. When we looked at APEST, she had a pretty unique combination. Her top ones were teacher and evangelist. And so let's pay attention to that. And Michelle, what are you passionate about? What do you just love doing without thinking about it? What do you get very excited about doing? She said, connecting with family and friends, studying God's word, and children. Anything related in those areas, it's a no-brainer for me. Sign me up. I want to be a part of it. I want to share together in those types of things. As we learned this about Michelle, then as she got into our Disciples Journey 3, we started to ask about those tensions that I named for you last night. And hey, Michelle, where are you on these tensions? How does this work for you? So on the formal and the informal, she gave herself a 4. She loves people, but she's a little bit more formal in nature in a lot of ways. She's good at structure and living into that. On the deep and the new, Michelle, where are you in that? She said, I tend to go a little bit deeper in my faith. I'm really not connecting with a lot of new people right now. On the belief and the behavior side, Michelle said, I'm a doer. And so I'm good at, my behavior, putting things into action. On the gathered and sent mindset, Michelle said, actually, I just have a heart for reaching out and connecting beyond the walls of this place. And so she was on a little bit more of the sent side. So as we learned that, then we asked this key question that we lifted up last night. How can the opposite side of the discipleship continuum that you are on be used to imaginatively stimulate and catalyze you to deeper discipleship? Michelle, wrestle with this a little bit. Look where you are on this tension, these tensions. How might the opposite side be used to stimulate you to further or deeper discipleship? What does that look like? When we ask this question, Michelle, we don't just leave it in her hands. We walk through this with her. In fact, one of my favorite things about this is that when Michelle does this, it's her and there are others in this Disciples Journey 3. And so collectively, the community has a chance to weigh in with Michelle and say, here's what we see in you. Here's a way we think you could live into that. Here's a way we think God might be calling you. And let me just tell you, it is one of the most fun things watching other members of the community and the body do that. It's one thing for me to do it. It's another thing when your peer says, man, you're so gifted with kids. Have you ever thought about, this with kids? And then I really listen to that and explore that. So in Michelle's case, and you can do this lots of different ways, but for us, as we ask that question, how can the opposite side of the tension that you're on stimulate you to deeper discipleship? Here were a couple questions that rose up. We looked at the tension from deep to new. Now remember, Michelle was more on the deeper side, so her challenge was connecting with new people. So a question that arose from Michelle was, hey Michelle, how can you be intentional to reach or connect new people? We know in your strengths that you're going deep, and that's great, but how can you connect with new people based on who God's made you to be? Or on the belief and behavior side, so Michelle, you're good at taking action. Great. How can you maybe be used to help others think more deeply about their faith? Like, Michelle, we invite you to look at that and think about that. And so Michelle began wrestling and thinking and praying, and we began talking and walking with her. And as we did that, again, these questions began to arise. How might Michelle use her teaching and evangelizing gifts? So here, we're going to be a little bit more specific. We know she's good at teaching. We know that on the APES stuff, teaching and evangelism were some of our top ones. So let's get more specific. How can you use your teaching and evangelizing gifts to connect with new people? We know that's a challenge for her, in a way to go deeper. Or here's another question. How can Michelle help develop, remember, she's a developer, help develop new people into deeper faith? Michelle, can you think about that? What might that begin to look like for you? And notice, these are a lot of, whoa. That was, yeah. That was, I didn't, did I? I don't think I did that. Can you take me all the way back where I was? Thanks. Keep going. Right there. Whoop. One more. Nope. Back. And right there. Let's pick up there. Yes. No, not there. All right, I'll move forward. That's not right. Right there. And then we ask this question next. There we go. Perfect. As we ask those questions then, I'm going to go one more. How might you take actual steps to live into those questions we just talked about? And here's what arose from Michelle. Here are the actions that she actually took. She actually became our Disciples Journey 1 facilitator. So I've talked about these different steps, and I shared with our workshop folks yesterday. I used to do that. I no longer do. This is great for a couple of reasons. Number one, it was just a time stretch for me to be able to always do that because I am involved in 2 and 3 especially. But also Michelle does it better than I ever did, which is a gift to our church. Why is that important that she's this DJ1 facilitator? Remember what one of her challenges was? Connecting with new people. Well, the people who are coming to our Disciples Journey 1, they are our new people. They are people who are just entering into life and faith. Like this is at the very beginning for them. And remember, she's a developer. And so this is a chance for her to meet people on the very front end and help connect them into the life of the church as a whole. She has a gift for hospitality. She has a gift for reaching out and connecting. She's so good at reaching out to anybody new among us and in a warm, hospitable spirit, inviting them in. Again, she's doing that way better than I ever could have. And so that's a gift. She has also served on our lead council. And so our lead council is our primary governing body. And so she brings her gifts of passion and everything else that I mentioned to our leadership, so that some of the DNA that she has is seeping into the rest of our church. And I love this about Michelle. She leads a Bible study, but she's been like, Pastor Matt, I don't really want to connect it with the church, at least not formally. Why not, Michelle? Because I've got some neighbors who aren't really church people, but they're willing to join with me and do a Bible study. Is it all right if I do that kind of thing? Absolutely, Michelle. Go right ahead, right? So again, connecting with some new people, but helping them go a little bit deeper. This is all Michelle. This is all laity driven in that sense. This is all her. And let me tell you, she enjoys doing it. Here's literally a testimony, a quote from her. She says, my faith journey began many years ago. I learned to love the Lord through the witness of others in prayer, Bible study, and belonging to a faith community. The Lord has spoken to me in many ways. I've heard his call in the night and on my many walks. My desire to follow the command, go and make disciples and love one another, had led me to the ministries I'm currently involved in. I am absolutely thrilled to use my genuine, caring, practical perspective and spiritual skills in the ministries that I lead. All these skills come from God. I am humbled to serve him and others through the initiatives I'm called to do. Now, I want you to pay attention especially to the bolded part. I'm absolutely thrilled to use. Here's one of my favorite things about this journey and this approach. We are absolutely called, stretched, and challenged in our discipleship. But look what the ultimate response is from her as she lives into discipleship. I'm absolutely thrilled. That is such a gift and a joy, right? She's growing, she's stretching, she's being challenged, but she loves it. I'm not saying that we just invite people to only do what they want to do. That's not what this is about. It's about helping them grow and move beyond what they think they can, but in the design that God has made them to be. And so that becomes, again, a win-win. She is serving the church in new ways, helpful ways. She's growing in discipleship, and she loves it because she is growing in her walk with Christ. And so Michelle has been such a joy for us to celebrate in a whole variety of ways. Here's another individual. This is Ashley. So I want to just do the same thing with you. Ashley, what are some of your strengths and abilities? So for her, She's very empathetic. She relates well to others. She's also a deep learner and loves to learn. She loves arranging things, putting things together in a meaningful way. And through that, she's a developer. She helps get you from point A to point B. Ashley, these are great gifts. We celebrate them with you. What are some of your spiritual gifts? The gift of hospitality, the gift of wisdom, the gift of teaching. When it comes to APES, she was a clear teacher. That was her top number one gift. But if you talk to Ashley, probably what her most important thing is that she loves, she's like, I love to pray. Like, it comes naturally to her. She wants to do it. She wants to involve others in it. And so prayer is just really, really important to her. Ashley, great. Now that we know some of those gifts, we've observed them in you as we take our next step in this discipleship journey. Let's look at those different tensions and apply your strengths, your passions, your gifts, and filter them through those tensions. And then once more, we ask that question, how can the opposite side of the discipleship continuum that you're on be used to imaginatively stimulate and catalyze you to deeper discipleship? What does that look like? Well, for Ashley, you can see what it showed up to be. She's pretty formal. She grew up in Sunday morning church. She is in the choir every week. This is what she does. This is what she knows, and she loves it. That's what she's become accustomed to. That's how she's been formed in the faith. On the deep and new tension, she goes deep all the time. She's a deep Bible studier. She'll be the first to tell you she's not connecting with a lot of new people. She's going deep herself, and she's been going deep for a long time. She's not really connecting with other new people. On belief and behavior, it won't surprise you, she's on the belief side. She focuses a lot on right belief and what that means. Interestingly, when we were going through this, she said, I've actually ticked up a little bit more on the behavior, towards the behavior side. So instead of being like a 1 or a 2 or a 3, she said, I am a 4. Why are you a 4? She said, because my boys, her kids, are getting older, and I find myself having to do more actions with them in the faith to model for them. And so it was nudging her already towards the behavior side. And on gathered and sent, again, she's used to Sunday morning church. Awesome. And so that's what she lifted up. It's that side for her of what she's used to in discipleship. So now, what questions might start to arise? And if you remember when we gathered together yesterday, I said some of this is more art than it is science. This is where the art part comes in, right? What questions come? And I just invite you to be curious with people. This is not so much a strict analyzation. Like, you can do some of that, but think of this as having fun. This is a chance to get to know people, ask questions, and see what emerges, and see what surprises you. And as you hear something, peek into it a little bit. I mean, dig in a little bit. It's a fun kind of thing. So Ashley, based on all those you just gave us of where you labeled yourself on these tensions, how can the opposite side stimulate you to deeper discipleship? A couple of the questions that rose up on the deep and new tension. So Ashley, we know you're good at going deep. How can you reach then or influence new people in faith? Like, what might that mean for you? And when I ask that question, what we're not saying here is, Ashley, you have to go out on the street corner and start connecting with every person that passes by. That's not her wiring. Sometimes I have people say to me, well, evangelism, that's not my gift. We don't get that option. Right? Like, we're all called to be fishers of it, right? And again, especially the way that Gary has laid this out for us. It's kind of like if people were to say, well, I don't really feel like giving. I'm not, generosity is not my gift. That doesn't get you off the hook. Like, you don't get to do that. No, nice try kind of thing, right? So Ashley may not be getting out on the street corner as the evangelist or, in any specific, but how can you connect with somebody, new people, like in your gift set? What does that look like? And then the next one, belief and behavior. Okay, she's heavier on the belief side. So Ashley, how can you put faith practices and actions more directly into your life? Like, what could that look like based on who God has made you to be? As we do that, don't forget, here's the layering. You're going through the tensions, but layer that on top of what was her top APEST? You're a teacher. All right, we're going to keep that in mind as we're asking this question. Layer that on top of her spiritual gifts and abilities. Oh, you're a teacher. Like, that's one of your gifts. And so you see the layering that's happening here. Like, literally, we're kind of stacking them on top of each other, and it becomes a fun exploration. Again, I get excited about this because out of a sense of curiosity, okay, what might emerge with this wonderful set of gifts to stretch you and move you forward? So in this case, for Ashley, we know you love prayer. We know you love teaching. So how can prayer and teaching be mixed together in an action-oriented way? You're good at belief, Ashley. What does an action-oriented thing look like for you so that you can reach new people in some way, or at least connect with new people or influence new people? What could that look like for you? So we talked to Ashley and we talked to the community and we start to see what might be able to rise up for us. And what was it that rose up for us? Well, we're going to keep asking those questions. Don't forget, she's really good at empathy. She's also really good at arranging things and putting things together. She's really good at challenging others to grow into their full potential. So Ashley, knowing all of that about you, what kinds of things might rise up for you? And I'm so excited for Ashley. This is some of what arose. Number one, a few years ago, we did a fall kickoff. I don't know how you do it in your setting, but every year, in the last couple of years, we've gotten the habit in the fall, we do this kickoff into the rest of the year. We have a lot of people scattered throughout the summer, so we kind of regather in the fall. To get ready for that, 2 years ago, Ashley said, would it be okay if I basically led a prayer initiative that leads up to the fall kickoff to help prepare our congregation for that kickoff and invite people to be praying for new people to join us and for our hearts to be open to connecting with new people, and that this fall kickoff can be a fresh new start. Could I lead a prayer initiative like that? Yes, absolutely, right? That was not on my radar at all. That sounds amazing. And so she did, and she got a phenomenal response. People picked up on this. It shocked me, but we had 100 different people sign up for her, and she's sending out daily for, the 40 days leading up to this. She sent out a daily email to our folks who wanted to see it and to join with her in prayer for this fall kickoff. And it was a powerful kickoff. We are convinced that in part, or large part, maybe primarily because of this initiative, where we did connect with new people, all being undergirded in prayer as Ashley used her developing and arranging gifts. It was great. At the same time, a few years ago, our church went through a very significant time of discernment about our future. We had a ton of questions. We weren't sure what we were going to do or how we were going to do it. Ashley comes to us. Could I lead a prayer initiative this time around discernment for the future? Absolutely. Man, we don't know what we're doing. We need as much guidance and focus as possible. And so she did. She's led us through Lent times of prayer as well. And again, sending daily reminders to folks. And she has also served on our lead council. One of the things about Ashley is she's been asking in her own life, what's next? We really believe that Ashley has a ministry call on her life. We don't know in what form yet. Right now, she's just asking the questions, but we have watched her come alive and blossom in this beautiful and wonderful ways. And it has been so. That is not me. I don't know why it's doing that. That's right. Look, greater things are to come. All right, the Lord is affirming our work and our time here. This is really good. All the way back to Ashley, if you can. Fast forward. It's the last Ashley slide. Keep going. One more. Oh, right there. Back up, sorry. I was wrong. Right there. It has been so good to watch Ashley blossom as in the ways that she has. Here's what she says about her discipleship journey experience. And again, I'm not making this up. I just want you to hear. These are their words. It's been such a blessing. She's talking about the prayer project that she coordinated to take this project underhand. I really love the amount of learning and reflection and growth that I personally received, and I have loved hearing from people far and wide that also enjoyed their Lenten journey. I've had many private messages, and over just 10 people just on this Sunday for her stopped me to thank her. She said it's really incredible how many of them say they learned so much about themselves and grew deeper in their faith. The testimonies were so awesome. She said, I've had people in Florida, Delaware, Virginia, Georgia, Texas, and of course all over PA, and also beyond that, I'm sure, because people were forwarding onward these prayer messages, is what she's talking about, that I didn't even know about. And then she's like, so cool. If you knew Ashley, you could hear her say that. So cool, this is great. And then look, I'd love to keep it going, but I'm not sure what that looks like yet. And then I love this. I'm praying on where to be led next. The journey is going to continue. She's not done. The transformation daily continues to happen so that ultimately more may come to know and follow Christ. Do you hear the joy in what she's lifting up? She's living into her teaching and prayer passions, but now angling them in a way or filtering them in a way to connect with new people in some way, or to soften our hearts as a church to connect with new people. Been such a joy. So I'm not going to walk through all of these with you, but I just want to give you a few more testimonies because I think they are significant. This is John and Sue. John is one of our raging apostles. Like this guy, you put something in front of him and he's got so much vision. So one of the things about John is they started a Code Blue homeless shelter in our setting. In fact, when John went through the tensions, he was like all 8s and 9s, like on all the way down. So like, he's like, I'm informal, I'm behavior based, I want to connect with new people, and I want to be sent like all over, which is awesome. Like, let me just tell you, the challenge with John is like, rein him in a little bit. And be like, hold on, buddy, kind of thing, because he's going to go, right? That's a great thing, but I think I said to our group yesterday in the workshop, one of the things I'll just lift up with you with this is, especially if you encounter somebody with an apostolic spirit, here's part of the challenge. They are going to foster new life. They are going to connect with new people. Here's the warning. They may do it in ways you either were not anticipating, do not like, or aren't sure what to do with. And can I just invite you in those situations, when they arise, do your best to be open-handed about it. Because more often than not, that fostering of life, even if you weren't looking at it, even if it's challenging you, the stimulation of that is probably going to increase the vitality in your church as a whole. But part of it is these folks have somewhat independent spirits. It's part of their giftedness, which means they may not immediately look at you when you ask them to do something and do it the way you want to do it. They're going to do it how they want to do it. But partner with them that and join them in that. So for John and Sue, they started this Code Blue experience for us, and it has taken off. In fact, we're trying to. It's right now. It's every night in Pennsylvania. It gets pretty cold in the winter. I think it's actually a little bit similar to here. I think, if I've heard correctly from a lot of you. But for us, January, February, March tend to be very cold. Every night, those nights, we open the bottom part of our facility. People come in for Code Blue. So that's a lot of new people. I mean, it gets filled now on a regular basis during those months. One of the things that John and Sue did this year, so those tensions, they're welcoming all these new people, they're taking all these actions. All right, John and Sue, what can you do? How can you help these individuals you're now having connection with? How can you in some way help them go deeper in their faith? How can you somehow help them take a more formal step of faith? You know what they did? 2 things this year. One, they started an alpha course on Sunday evenings for those folks. And it went great. I mean, and when I say that, like they had like 8 to 10 that came every week. Awesome. That was terrific. The other thing is John and Sue, they're usually in our formal worship service. So we have a formal one and a contemporary. They're usually in our formal worship service. So you know what John and Sue did a lot of weeks? They said, hey, Joe, I'm going to worship this morning. You want to come with me? And literally as Code Blue would finish at like 7 a.m., they would come and join us then for the formal worship service and sit in the worship with us. And they mostly wanted to do that. Why? Because they trusted John now and his wife Sue because of how they had walked with them. How did John and Sue feel about this? Well, here's their testimony. They said, we dreamed about ways we might serve the homeless population in our community and founded what has come to be known as Code Blue Shelter at First Church. Since its inception, the 85 overnight volunteers have served over 230 individuals with over 3,400 beds and occupied thousands of dinners and breakfasts, all for the purpose of sharing the love and hope offered only by Jesus. We envisioned, founded, and have led these and other ministry initiatives because we have felt personally called by Christ and sent to serve, and above all else, we love Jesus. Through them, we have experienced the joyful mountaintop times where we sat humbly next to our God, and we've experienced times in the desert where we experienced frustration, anxiety, and sometimes even fear. And then they said, as apostles, though, we wouldn't change a thing. The more we humble ourselves to serve, the more we are blessed. I don't know how many of you can relate to some of those experiences. It is terrifying and scary and amazing all at once. As they journey, that's what's happening for them. Real quick, here's one more from Caleb and his wife Peyton. Caleb ended up being one of our most significant youth leaders. And if you heard his story, it's because he didn't get to grow up with that experience in his life. if you share and read in his testimony here, I want to go straight to the bottom. He says, I learned just as much from them, that is the students, as he offers to them. And he says, I am happy to continue to do it. For Caleb, he was wired primarily as a teacher as well. And so for him, one of the newer ways to get out was to be able to connect with our youth, because a lot of times youth invite other youth. And so that's where he was connecting with new people, one of the ways that he grew. And the last one to share here is this guy, Mike, and his wife, Jen. They have 3 young kids. And a couple years, Mike is a teacher by trade. He teaches middle school. As we said to Mike one year, what does it mean for you to live into your teaching gift? And for him, he felt really called to help our congregation believe stronger. How can we do that? What would that look like? He began for us a fall kickoff devotion that our church now creates. That has become one of the most meaningful, impactful things our entire church does. I don't know what it's like for you all. Most of the time, our church, our life groups, they're all doing separate things throughout the year. When we do our fall kickoff, 6, 7, 8 weeks together, all of our groups come together and we look at and we study the exact same thing. It's this devotion that Mike created and wrote for us. So good, so powerful. So he's living into his teaching gift, but it's being leveraged in a way to help our entire congregation grow deeper in who they are. So I hope that helps just a little bit to give you a sense like what we're trying to do. And again, it's more art than it is science. Like we're looking at all of this, but then when we put it together, we never know exactly what God's going to do with this. So what does this look like for you in your setting? Here's what I invite you to think about. This does not have to be overwhelming. I know one of the biggest issues we all face is the tyranny of the urgent. I feel it myself all the time. And so I would say this to you. As we're looking at a disciple's journey and what that means, I don't think it has to be overly complex, but that doesn't mean it's like the easiest thing in the world because it takes intentionality on our part. So here's what we invite folks to do. When they're in Disciples Journey 2, we're observing their gifts and abilities. I just walked you through that. We keep praying about that. As they get to Disciples Journey 3, we invite them to embrace their gifts, and we ask these interpretive questions based on your gifts and your abilities and your wirings. How might God want to use you and challenge you in discipleship? And then from there, we set them free to act and to intervene in the world and kingdom in the ways that God has wired them. So this is what it looks like on our calendar. 2 or 3 times a year, people connect in the life of the church, a discipleship or a membership group, etc. In the fall of the year, I told you we're going to start in 2 weeks. 6 sessions with the discovery time, discover your gifts. 8 to 12 sessions in the spring of the year to embrace those gifts. And again, why 8 to 12? Because it depends how many people do it. If we only have a few people do it, we don't need as many weeks. We're okay with that. Other weeks, if more people do it, we extend the amount of time till we walk with every person so that they can be seen and the community walks with them to discern their gifts and lift them up. And then we set them out to be who God has called them to be. I would encourage you, whatever this looks like for you, part of the power in this for me is this flywheel effect. This is what helps change our culture. Go back to the video that we looked at. At the very beginning, people did not immediately come running out, right? The guy was out there dancing by himself. You might do this, and the first time through, you might feel like this isn't making much of a difference. Do it again. Still not making a lot of a difference. Do it again. Still not making a lot of difference. Do it again. And then something starts to happen. Something starts to change, and you notice, you know what? Our culture is changing. A movement of some kind is beginning to emerge. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the diffusion of innovation, but here's a word of encouragement for you. If you want your discipleship culture to change, you do not need 51% of people on board with you. You don't. You actually, statistically, only need about 16%. Well, I don't know about you, but I mean, if I can just walk around and tap shoulders and get close to 16%. Why? How does that work? Because for a culture to change, here's what you need. You need some innovators. You need somebody who's going to come along and be the primary driver. There's not a lot of those among us. In a lot of instances, I'm guessing in your setting, you're probably a lot of the people that are in that innovator seat. Like you're the major catalyst to help make something happen. While there's not a lot of those, I can also tell you this. If you're not an innovator, there are other people that once you lift up the idea, maybe they didn't think of it, but they will immediately be on board with you. Like they don't want to fight it. In fact, they're ready to join you instantly. They just needed somebody to name it. So my hope and prayer for you is once you name it, there'll be at least a few people, those shining eyes who say, I'm with you, and away we go. That's all you need. Here's why. For the rest of the people here, or at least a large group of them, they just need some education and information, and they'll get on board with you. They're not necessarily against you, but in not knowing, they're going to be hesitant. We were talking earlier, people don't resist change, they resist loss. So as you educate them, as you do this flywheel over and over, the change will not be so scary to them. And so they'll start to join you. And then as you do that repeatedly, those people that were really hesitant, eventually they'll get on board with you. And only at the very end, there will always be a handful of people, we'll call them laggards to be nice here today, all right? But you know who they are. Those people that need extra special prayer and grace, right? Like, there's always going to be a handful that just resist you no matter what, and we pray God's blessing upon them, and then we just pray more. All right, we'll just leave it at that, all right? One of my favorite examples of this is with Steve Jobs and with Apple. You can think of with Apple technology and everything, obviously Steve Jobs was the innovator, marrying art and technology together in a significant way. There haven't been too many Steve Jobs in the world, right? He would be an innovator. Early adopters would be those people, when they know that the next iPhone is coming out, they go to the store to wait 3 or 4 hours in line so that when the doors open, they are ready to get those phones immediately. They didn't come up with the product, but they are waiting for it as soon as it does. Early majority would probably be like my wife. In our family, she is the far more technologically advanced, and so she's not going to wait in line at the store hours on end. But when it's time, she will get a new phone. Like, she's ready to do that and appreciates what it can do. Late majority would probably be like me. I am not against phones. Love it, really helpful. I'm just so not techie that I'm going to kind of wait and wait and wait till I really need a new one. And eventually, Matt will get on board. Laggards would be like my grandmother, who until the day she passed away, it was only the phone that hung on the wall with a cord was what she was going to use. For us in this discipleship journey, that's how the culture changes. With each flywheel, which every time you do this, more and more people get on board with you, educated, and get on the journey with you. One other way to look at this that I find helpful, think about ascending a mountain. Imagine if you were looking down from on top on the mountain. Every time you're doing one of these flywheels, at first, what would it look like? If you're looking from the top down, what does that look like? It looks like you're just going in circles, right? From that angle, what are you doing? You're not doing anything. You're just running in circles. Until you come onto the side of the mountain, every time you make one of those circles, it's another lap ascending the mountain. Every loop is a little bit more clarity, a little bit more elevation, a little bit more gaining. And so that's what we're inviting people to do in this flywheel. So I don't know what this looks like in your setting, but I want to just kind of put that out there and invite you to live into this flywheel concept, knowing that's how our culture, especially around discipleship, changes. It's not a one-off program. This isn't even a program. It's designed to be an experience that helps us grow together. I want to invite you to remember this as well, really clearly. Just Jesus did a lot with a few. So here's how this works in our setting. We have the most people do Disciples Journey 1, connecting. We have less do Disciples Journey 2, where they are discovering. We have even less do 3, where they're embracing. We have even less doing the multiplication. We're okay with that. If there's even 2 or 3 people a year that get to 4, we absolutely believe God can and will use them to do more than 50 people at a surface level who just want to be volunteers. And so we are committed to that. And we've seen that over and over and over. I just gave you a bunch of examples, but we've had nursing home fresh expression leaders. People have realized, I have an apostolic heart, I just didn't know that, and we learned to set them free. I just told you about John as a Code Blue director. We've had a men's mentor rise up who says, hey, I just want to invest in guys because I know that they're struggling right now. We've had children's ministry advocates come about. One person even said, I'd love to write a children's devotional. Awesome. Yeah, go for it. We've had youth ministry leaders rise up. We've had a Church on the Mountain, which is a fresh expression that we do, leader rise up. We've had new worship leaders arise among us. We've had life group facilitators rise up. We've had a Transform, is we do a 1-week mission experience in Williamsport every year. It is a giant undertaking, giant. We've had somebody say, I'll lead that. I will pull all the volunteers together. I will line up all the jobs, etc. I'll take care of that. We've had other people step up and say, we knew our contemporary experience needed to just like a redo. I'll tackle that. I share that with you because I could not have predicted at the beginning that this was what would rise up. We've had to be a little bit more open-handed and say, all right, Lord, whatever you have in store. But each one of these individuals has impacted our culture in a really significant and wonderful way. It's made us a better church. It's helped us grow in discipleship. Who knows what it will be for all of you? So tying all this together, and then in a little bit, if there's some questions that you have, I want to invite you to ask those. Here's what I hope I'm trying to lay out for you. Like, how is this then different or distinctive from other discipleship programs that might be out there? This is how I understand it, and I hope this is helpful for you. First of all, there's a focus on relationship here. Like, we're letting people be seen. When you look at somebody and you say, I see this gift in you, man, that's really fun. They feel valued and affirmed, and I feel like I know them better. I shared with our workshop people yesterday, I'm almost embarrassed to admit this, but on the spiritual gifts inventory, my lowest is pastor. So I share that with you because for me personally, when I go through this disciples journey, I get to see people and I feel like, and I want to, like I'm excited to be with them, but it lets me feel a little bit more pastoral with them, which I really appreciate. I believe this is a sustainable congregational rhythm. 6 months in the fall, 8 to 12 weeks in the spring, entry points throughout the year, setting people free. Like, at least for me, I can do that. That feels better than you must do this every week, 52 weeks of the year, and it can never stop. That's too much for me. It does build momentum because of the flywheel concept. It simultaneously affirms people in their gifts. This is one of my favorite things. We affirm them, but we also challenge them. Like, go deeper. God's given you these gifts and abilities. Don't sit on them. Go. And they do. It addresses the needs of the body of Christ. It's not driven by the needs of the body of Christ. So remember, this is not us picking a volunteer because we need a warm body here. We're not always sure what's going to rise up. And it's beautiful and wonderful and messy all at once. And so I love that as well. This presents a model, I think, more like Jesus over and over. This is the model that I see Christ living into himself. Again, it provides an ongoing dynamic approach, the flywheel concept. It offers a ground-up experience. We're not just implementing this from the top down that everybody has to follow. It lets us be intentional. So clear entry points, repeated entry points that people, when they're ready and as the Spirit leads them, that they join into. It values the informal just as much as formal. This may not be the case in your setting, but in lots of churches I'm with, they tend to be better on the formal and struggle with informal. But here, as I recall, that wasn't the case. You have a whole lot of churches doing great informal work, which is awesome. And it offers multiple engagement points with this wicked problem of discipleship. It fosters church-wide alignment. This is not a standalone endeavor. And I love this. It involves a communal discernment. There's a few others traveling with you to affirm you, walk with you, help hold you accountable. And then it lets people live into their call rather than just fill a slot. And I love that. Nobody wants to be a slot filler. Everybody wants to use the gifts and abilities God has given them. And then finally, it raises the expectations. Like, we're not going to compromise and say, oh, if you're not willing to join us in 3, we'll make it easier. No, if you're not ready, you're not ready. But we hope and we trust in time you will be. Lets people be seen with their gifts and leave space for God. Like, I can't tell you with each one of these how it's going to turn out, what it's going to look like. So we began our time with this question, and this is kind of what I would leave you with. Lord, what would you have me to do? When I leave here today, what are the pieces for me to take? What would you have me to do? Because here's what I want to submit to you, and the image I want to leave in your mind. You never know when we put ourselves out there. We never know what's going to happen, because discipleship can happen anywhere, in our religious spaces, but in our non-religious spaces as well, right? What's required, though, is you all to say, all right, Lord, here I am, use me. Even if it means being that lone dancer. One of my absolute favorite stories begins like this. All great stories start this way, don't they? Once upon a time, right? So once upon a time, there was a great king who owned a great kingdom. One morning, the king got up and he looked around, and as he was looking, he saw that he owned everything that he could see as far as his eye could see, except for one little sliver off in the distance. And he went to some of his advisors and he said, why don't I own that land? And they said, well, you've never asked for it. If you want it, you can send your army there and you can conquer it and you can own that part of the kingdom as well. And so the king said, I think I would like to own that village. It's the last piece that I don't yet own. So he sent some of his army folks to that village, and they walked into the village and they said to the people who were living there, they said, the king, by edict and decree, has decided, starting next week, this land will belong to the king. Well, you can imagine the people in the village, they were in an uproar, like, why are you doing this to us? We've lived in peace all of this time, and all of these kinds of things, and they didn't know what they were going to do. It just so happened on this particular day, as this conversation was being had, a town strangler, a wanderer, was coming through town. And he heard everybody talking and upset in the village. He said, what's going on? And they said, oh, we've lived by ourselves all of this time, and now the king wants our land, and this is awful. We don't know what we're going to do. And the town wanderer said, well, why don't you ask if you can keep it? Like, the king might be a reasonable man. See if he'll let you keep the land. Like, no, you don't know the king. Like, he wouldn't do that. He's already made up his mind. Well, town straggler was like, well, I have nothing to lose. He's like, well, I'll go talk to him. So he goes and he talks to the king, and the king listens, and he says, I admire your courage. Nobody's ever come to me and asked me before to not take their land. But you know what? Since you've asked me, I'll give you a fighting chance. This is what you can do. Go back and tell the people, if one of them will go against my bishop in a silent debate, and if they can beat my bishop in a silent debate, then you can keep the land. Well, as he went back and shared this first when the town straggler heard that, he's like, great, there's a fighting chance. So he goes back, he tells the villagers and says, hey, you can keep your land. One of you just has to go up against a bishop in a silent debate. What's a silent debate? Well, a debate done by motion, right? Without words. Well, as soon as the people heard this, there was even more dismay. They're like, the bishop is the wisest man in the kingdom. There's nobody that can beat him. And they're going on and weeping and wailing and all these things. And finally, town straggler was like, I don't have anything to lose. He's like, I'll give it a try. So they're like, look, if that's what you want to do, and you're fine, go ahead. So the town straggler says, I'll go against your bishop in a silent debate, he says to the king. So the king says, fine. So they make arrangements in the kingdom. Now, in this day and in this time, this is like big doings, right? And so they call all these people together, and they're kind of in this stadium setting, and they pull out a long table, and at one end of the table sits the bishop. At the other end of the table sits this town straggler. The king gets up and he begins by describing the rules of the debate. And he says, my bishop will begin the silent debate. The town straggler, he can respond however he needs and wants to, but whoever breaks the silence first loses. Everyone clear? Begin. So the bishop began, and he goes, to which the town straggler responded, gasps from the crowd. They've never seen anyone respond to the bishop before. So the bishop continues, and he goes, to which the town straggler responded, again, gasps from the crowd. Who is this man of such brilliance to dare to respond to the bishop? This is incredible. Finally, the bishop reaches under the table, and he pulls out an apple, and he sets it on the table. Town straggler reaches under the table, pulls out a loaf of bread, and sets it on the table. And finally, the bishop breaks the silence. I've lost. I have never encountered anyone of such brilliance. Well, now the king is so frustrated. He's like, you lost? But he's got to honor his word. So he looks at the town straggler and says, go back and tell the villagers they can keep their land. Once the town straggler was gone, the king looks at his bishop. He says, how did you lose? You're the wisest man in the kingdom. What did you all say? And he said, I began and I said, God is three. He responded, but God is one. I said, God is everywhere. And he said, but God is right here. Then he said, I reached under the table and I got the apple to symbolize the fall of humanity with Adam and Eve eating the forbidden fruit. He said, he reached under the table and he put out a loaf of bread, symbolizing Christ as the bread of life and the answer to humanity's fallenness. I've never encountered a man of such brilliance. Meanwhile, the town straggler gets back to town and he says to the village, and he says, great news, you can keep your land. What? How did you beat the bishop? The town straggler said, it really wasn't that hard. He said, what did you say? He said, the bishop started and he said, you have 3 days to get out of here. And I said, we're not going. Then he said, you can go anywhere else in the kingdom that you want to go. And I said, we're staying right here. And then he goes, he got out his lunch and I got out mine. And he said, that was it. Like, I don't understand, right? You never know when you say, Lord, here I am, how God may use you with all of your gifts and abilities or lack thereof. So I ask you today, Lord, what would you have me to do? He doesn't need you to be perfect. He doesn't need you to have it all figured out. You might not even be sure after all of this, I don't know how to go back and do this. You don't need to have it all figured out, but you do just need to say, Lord, here I am. Use me. And as we do that, I believe the Lord will surprise us. My invitation to you is help people experience the adventure of discipleship. Help them grow in formation in such a way that it leads to new life, connecting with others in their faith. Because here's a discipleship truth I will share with you. Nobody drifts into a committed, growing relationship with Christ by accident. Nobody wakes up one day and says, I'm not sure how it happened, but without really knowing it, I'm a lot more like Jesus in every area of my life. It doesn't work that way. If you're at all like me, this is how I found discipleship to work. Oh, you can't see that on there. Usually we think of discipleship as a slow, steady upgrade instead of how it often is just one big squiggly line. And that's okay. I think that's how it works in the real world. Discipleship is not a class. It is a lifestyle. And I invite you today to invite people into that lifestyle. This kind of cut off a little bit, but you get the idea. And this is where we began. This is where we're going to end. I say to you today that the harvest is plentiful. And to all of you today, God has chosen you. You in this time for this grand harvest that's out there. So will you say yes to whatever that might mean? That God's will, God's kingdom may grow. Amen. I want to take just a couple minutes, and one thing I've not given you much chance to do, and just want to honor your time, is if there's any questions that you have that you want to lift up, I want to do that, and then when we're done with that, we'll pray, and you're welcome to go. But I hope this has been an opportunity for you just to kind of absorb and to be thinking of fresh and new in some different ways, but intentional ways of what can be possible in your setting when it comes to formation and discipleship. So you've heard a whole lot from me. Do you have any quick questions here before we pause? Yeah. 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 So first of all, I'd say that's attention, right? Like I'm going to lift that up. So I'll say this. I don't think it's a class. I think it's a lifestyle. What we try to do with Disciples Journey 2, 3, and 4, there's going to be some programmatic elements to it, no doubt. But it really is, if we're approaching it open-handed and inviting the Spirit in it and not knowing exactly what's going to come out of it, I like to think that it really is more of an experience where we journey with people in a way that this becomes relevant to them, and then who knows where God will lead from there. So it requires some formality. I'm not going to deny that at all. It requires intentionality. What we're trying to do, though, is to say we're going to be open to whatever that might lead into. Is there a resource or framework we can look at for what you're doing? Yes. So 2 things. I mean, the book, if you didn't get it, that's a start. But here's the second thing. Someone did ask me this yesterday. I believe in the spring, I think in April, there will be a more specific, I'll say curriculum, because I don't know a better word to use, that will be coming out. Because I know for some people, it's like, hey, I'm open to this. I don't have the time or mental space to figure out my elements of 2 or my elements of 3. So those will be supplied, but that will be coming out in the spring. So yeah. Great call. Oh, yeah. So glad you said that. So one thing I did not mention, and I should have, everybody in our church can go through 1 and 2. Everybody. It does take, if they decide to go from 3 into 3 and 4 though, what we will do with that is myself and usually someone else, especially if we have a concern, for lack of a better term, we have to give permission for them to go on to 3 and 4. Because what we are not going to do is if somebody with a significant mental health issue or something like that, we can't just set them free to go do whatever they're going to do. So you're exactly right in that. We do use discernment there. And really, it's not so different from, if you're feeling a call into ministry, it's an inner call that God is stirring your heart. It's also an outer call, meaning someone else has to affirm those gifts in you. It can't just be you saying, I'm going to go do this. So we do a similar thing here. If somebody's feeling stirred inwardly, awesome. But myself and part of our community have to also affirm that we believe you're at a healthy place to keep moving in this direction. And if they're not, what we do want to do is take steps to help them find health wherever they are. That's a great question. Thank you. Great question. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Right. Yep. 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 So if it helps at all, I hear you. I think what I would also say in that is I don't want to misportray that we've only had the cream of the crop come to us. Right? And I know I say that, lightly, but some of these folks have tremendous, like some of the people I've mentioned, have tremendous brokenness in their lives. That does not exclude them from taking these steps of faith, like as long as they're mentally healthy and all of those kinds of things. And we have a whole. I didn't lift up all the people that said no. I didn't lift up all the messes for you. It's the one slide that didn't come out. This is messy. So and I'm really glad you said that. Let me say to all of you, this is not a pretty, fine-tuned, perfect process. We've had people, my heart has been broken many times by people who I was convinced could and should take next steps, and they said no. My heart has been broken many times by people who have said, I got too much, we got cancer and 100 other things. We can't go any farther. Okay, but here's the beauty in this. We've invited you this year. You're dealing with cancer. We invite you the next year. You're still recovering from cancer. We invite you the third year. I'm better now, and I can do this. I'm in crisis now, but 2 years from now, I may not be. And so I would say all those kind of people you're talking about, they are our people. But there's space for them to either self-select out or when they're ready and for healing to then move forward. So now, having said that, we have amazing people too, but so do you. Even one or two, amazing, but that's all it takes for the culture to change. So yeah.
What do you think about intentional selection, where you don't have a program, you don't have a format?
Yep.
But you have people in your church, and you're a pastor, and you don't have all these classes, but you have an intentional selection. Maybe you can explain something like that.
Just so, when you say intentional selection, just help me to know what you mean by that.
Okay, Jesus prayed all night, and then he went and picked the disciples.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
How does that happen in a church setting?
Yep.
For a pastor, do you wait for the person to come up to you
Oh.
and say, I want to be discipled? Or
Yeah.
do you say,
Yep.
hey, I want to
Great question, thanks. So it works both ways in our setting. Every time one of these disciple journey steps comes along, we would do what I would call a macro approach and a micro approach. The macro is we announce, hey, everybody, we're going to have this starting next Tuesday. We invite you to come. And we hope and pray some will hear that and say, we choose to come. And lots of times they do, but increasingly this is what we do. Our key leaders and our key staff people, I talk to them and I say something like this: can you lift up 3 names that you are of people you know right now that you think this would be a great next step for them? And they do. And then either I contact them or we email them, or I say to those individuals, and would you tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, would you consider doing this? So it's both. We put out the general announcement, as it were, but also there is definitely some intentional, who do you think is ready for this right now? And we invite them personally into it. Yeah, great. Yeah.
So I'll never see the acronym APES, get the weeds, but I guess can you clarify for me, based on Ephesians 4:11, 1 Corinthians 12:29, like, is it your view that everybody's an apostle, Paul, pastor, teacher, or is it?
Yep. Absolutely. So question was, is everybody an apostle, prophet, evangelist, shepherd, or teacher? Like, is that? And I would say a couple things on that. That hold a little bit loosely. It's one framework. It's one model. I don't want to say to all of you it's the only one. There are others, and you referenced other scriptures. So pay attention to that. What I would say is this: of those 5 offices, I believe we actually all have sort of latent DNA of all 5, but with a priority towards 1 or 2. So in my case, like my number 1 that comes up for me personally is apostle. That doesn't mean though that like I'm not called to shepherd. In fact, if anything, what I'm realizing is like I want to be intentional in that direction. But what I won't do is define my identity as by saying I have to be shepherd number 1. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to live into my apostleship, but I'm going to try to grow into the other areas and almost see those as growing points. But APEST is just one model. You can use other ones. That's just one that we've used because it gives us language to use in a framework that for our people has been helpful. And you might get other opinions on that, but from what I've experienced with people, I think everyone's got 1, maybe 2 near the top, and then we pay attention to the other ones. We don't just ignore them. It's getting kind of like saying, well, I'm not generous. Well, no, yeah, we're all called to share the gospel. We're all called to nurture others, even when it's not our number 1. Does that help? Okay, yeah, great, good, yeah. Do we use what do you, where, like APEST? Yeah, sorry, so there's an, yeah, and we can get this, it's online, I'm blanking what there's just a free online tool around APEST. It's like 80 questions, I think. It's free. You can just use it and look it up. I don't have it right here in front of me, but that's what we use for our folks. If you just Google free APEST inventory, I'm sure it will come up. There's a couple options, but you don't have to pay for the one. The one we use is free. Yeah. Great. It is primarily adult. We've had a few youth, no kids. We haven't done it that way with in fact, what we would try to do with our kids is something different. But we have had a few older youth join us in this, and that really depends. Instead of us saying there's an age cutoff, we've actually said it just depends on the kid. Kind of we take it case by case and feel like they could be a 15-year-old that we think is at a mature level to do this, or a senior at the same thing. Well, we haven't had a lot, but a few. Yeah, good. Anything else? Yeah, Andrea. Thank you. Yeah, so glad you asked that. Somebody asked this yesterday, and I should have mentioned this. The way this is designed is when you get to 4, which is multiplying, the real goal there is that as you're going out and raising up new disciples, what we invite them to do, any new disciples they're connecting with, that they invite those new disciples into 1. Like so that those new people can start the journey. Correct. They don't have to come into 1 with them. They could if they wanted or it was so appropriate, but that's not required at all. Their goal is to help raise them up to go into 1 so that it can start with them. Then those multipliers, we're like, keep doing what you're doing. Now, what we do with the multipliers, though, we do try to meet with them. It could be twice a year. It could be occasional one-on-ones to be resourcing them, encouraging them, checking in with them. And I'll also confess to all of you that number 4, I've not said a whole lot about it because we've done it different ways. We're still trying to figure out what's the best way to walk with our multipliers on an ongoing basis. We're still figuring that out. Go ahead. Yes. Yes. Yeah, I think they do because actually we are just now encountering this. We've just made the decision in our settings. This is brand new for us. For anyone in our setting who has done a disciples journey 2, but then if it's been 5 years or more, and nothing's happened, we're ready to go back to them and invite them again. And there's also no problem for someone that's done 2. Maybe they then get stuck after that. They themselves, the next best step might be to do 2 again before they go on to 3. And no problem at all. Yeah, great, great, good. Any last things here before we finish? 2 more and then we'll finish. Yeah, go ahead, back. Go ahead. Correct. That is correct. This is not a sermon series where everybody does it. It's not a church-wide Bible study. Now, I'll say this. The hope is that everybody would. The hope is, but I've not encountered anyone ever that said, hey, our whole church is doing, and it's gone all the way to 4, right? So that's correct. For this reason, Jesus did a lot with 12. We're good with that. And if that's what it takes, then that's, I mean, but we will always have as many as possible, but we've learned to say the success of this is not reaching a certain number. It's the faithful following through. So, yeah, and then we'll finish.
Just in your giftings, in your calling, you can seem to gravitate to disciple people who have that same calling.
Yep.
So for me, in discipleship, I've helped disciple many men and women that have become pastors, preachers.
Yep.
What have you, and I just seem to gravitate towards that
Yep.
more. So do you think that's something that should be recognized? If I'm an intercessor, I'm going to gather intercessors.
Yep.
I'm going to disciple it after the multiplication part of it. That's kind of.
Yeah, I absolutely think, I think we naturally gravitate towards some others that we connect with or have similar thoughts, ideas, passions. But in this case, like what I would say to that is if the body of Christ is real, and it is, then I'm going to trust that our apostles are finding other apostles, and our shepherds are finding other shepherds, and our teachers are finding other teachers, and collectively the body comes into fullness in that way. So that it's not a problem if you're drawn to others like you, as long as other people are doing the same thing in their gravitational pulls.